Let's speak to Tony Galsing. He's an investigative journalist and he joins us via Skype from Bristol. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Galsing. Now, first of all, before we get into Bahram Qasemi's comments, I'd like to get your opinion on Donald Trump's whole approach when it comes to Iran's nuclear program and the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, specifically when you look at the presser he gave with Netanyahu.
Well, yes, I think the problem here is that actually Obama did quite a lot to mend the long-term future of the Middle East by sealing this deal with Iran. It looks to me as if the Republican Party, probably just as much as Donald Trump himself, is trying to now undo that deal because they're very, very wedded to Israel through the AIPAC and the Israel lobby in the United States. Many of the Republican senators get direct funding from AIPAC, from the Israelis, in order to fund their individual campaigns. So there's an incredibly powerful Israel lobby. And I think that's why we're seeing this policy shift now away from focusing on the boogeyman of Russia and now looking at Iran as the boogeyman again and trying to undo this deal. That's actually one of the most important things that I think that Obama did while he was in office was this rapprochement of relations between Iran and the United States. Of course, it would be very sensible for the United States to have good relations with Iran, which is not an aggressive country, although we keep hearing this about terrorists, etc., on the television. The fact of the matter is, many of these terrorists are in fact funded by the NATO countries. We're talking specifically about the United States, that has been revealed by the whistleblower. One of the whistleblowers, anyway, has revealed this. Scott Bennett is his name, former psychological warfare officer, being funded through UBS in Switzerland. So actually, even though we're being told these terrorists are not state actors, they're being covertly funded via the Swiss. And this is, the rhetoric is changing with the new regime, and it looks as if Iran is becoming the bogeyman again, which is really silly for the whole world. Actually, the United States particularly is not going to benefit from this. They are interfering, just like the British did for centuries around the world, and they've taken over where the British left off at the end of the Second World War.
Well, Mr. Galsing, it's also the question of the international community as a whole, where Iran's nuclear program is scrutinized, discussed. Iran is sanctioned over it, despite a lack of evidence of its military nature. However, at the same time, we do know that Israel has a nuclear weapons arsenal, and that remains undiscussed, uncriticized.
Well, it's taboo, effectively. It's because it doesn't fit with what the policymakers in Washington want. They're not interested in the facts, and many of these people are bought and paid for. There isn't any really, I don't think, brave investigative journalism going on in the mainstream media in the West either. There was, back in the 1990s, on the 13th of July 1993, for example, here on British television, on ITV, we had a programme called Dirty Bomb, transmitted by Roger Cook and the Cook Report, which was doing serious investigations into the availability of Russian nuclear weapons and nuclear material such as weapons-grade plutonium on the black market in the early 1990s after the economic collapse of Russia and the Russian troops hadn't been paid. This sort of thing doesn't go on anymore, and because programs like him, for example, that program was closed down by a smear campaign in the News of the World owned by Rupert Murdoch. But it's pretty clear the Israelis do have many nuclear weapons. The minimum estimates are 80 nuclear weapons, according to the Defense Intelligence Agency in the United States, and the higher estimates go up to around about 250. So it's absolutely ridiculous for this to carry on. We need the Israelis to open their books on what their nuclear arsenal is and come clean on what they intend to do with it.
But that's not very likely to happen anytime soon now, is it, Mr. Galsing?
It's not likely, but since this remains a taboo in the West, this is the thing that's very important, is to keep putting pressure on the Israelis to say, what have you got there? What are you intending to do with it? Because all the time you're demonizing Iran, where there's very little, if any, evidence of nuclear weapons in Iran, you're not talking about the people who are the real threat to peace in the Middle East, which is the Israelis. I think if any part of the world needs to go through some kind of SALT talks like we had between the Soviets and the United States back in the 1980s to de-escalate in order to get rid of these weapons, I think the Middle East is probably the prime target right now. And in order to make that happen, we need brave journalism and we need proper investigations. The public needs to know around the world, and the politicians, the decision makers, that there is a potential conflict brewing here. We need to stop it right now.
All right, let's leave it there for now. That's Tony Galsing. He's an investigative journalist joining us via Skype from Bristol. Mr. Galsing, it's always a pleasure having you with us here on Press TV.